Good afternoon. This is Dr. Thomas Klein. I am coming to you from Raleigh, North Carolina. I am the senior advisor for the National Pain Council here in Raleigh. I'm sort of the spokesman. Jonelle Eljaway, who is our executive director, is the spokesman, and she is appearing mostly on Facebook and sometimes TikTok. So you can tune in there to Eljaway, Elgeway, Eljaway, and get her perspective as a pain patient and executive director for the National Pain Council. And you get my medical information here on YouTube and also Twitter. I refuse to say it's known as X, but well, what people do, Anyway, we have a little bit of news today. Before we start, we're going to try to hold these sessions to 10 minutes. I got a little timer here. And we're going to try for Tuesdays and Fridays. So you might want to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and the little bell, because it'll notify you when there's a new YouTube. We sometimes are a little erratic. It kind of depends on whether or not we're getting information from the National Pain Council that's worth putting out to you, the general public, and to you, physicians, and to you, people with addiction disease. We have an interest in all things opiate. A terrible thing has happened in our country. We have a small group of people beating the drum that opiate pain medicines that we've been using since before the pyramids were built are suddenly dangerous, and they don't work. They're not dangerous, and they do work, and they work very well. We'll talk about the danger as we present other topics. So today, I wanted to give some important news. The states are dumping the CDC guidelines. The CDC guidelines of 2016 were developed by the federal government, which is not an appropriate place to do anything medical, because that right is reserved under the 10th Amendment to the Constitution to the states. But they did anyway. And why did they set out their own guidelines? Because they wanted to put in restrictions. 90 milligram restriction, which every doctor is still holding to. We hear it every single day. It was in my consent with the North Carolina Medical Board when they took my license away that I violated the CDC guidelines of 90 milligrams. Of course. Based on a survey we've done, only 1/3 of people can have their pain relieved under 90 milligram MME. 2/3 are above. So if we enforce this 90 milligrams, we would disenfranchise 2/3 of the 10 million people who have to take daily opiates because they have painful disease. Now, we're going to talk about painful disease at another time. But I wanted to point out that California has basically said in their new regulations for their state board, ignore the CDC guidelines. And that's good. And we're going to have a separate session on all the states, but I wanted to bring this to your attention because it was just recently. Whether or not this follows that doctors will suddenly start treating pain patients is a problem, because they're still afraid of the federal government, and that's better because of the Supreme Court decision last June. But I want to get on to the topic for today, which is euphoria, or getting high. The assumption is that all the drugs get people high. And that's true for the stimulant group. Now, the stimulant group is cocaine, methamphetamine, ecstasy, Adderall. Those are all stimulants. And the stimulants are the old-fashioned, uppers. There were uppers and downers. And the downers were the opiates. Now, most everybody who abuses, which means taking more than is recommended by doctors, of amphetamines will make you feel euphoric. or the street term high. I don't like that street term high because it's kind of non-specific. Euphoria and the word energized are much more important. So the average person who takes cocaine will feel energized because it's related to your own adrenaline uppers. Now, the second group are the narcotics or opioids or opiates. We prefer the term narcotic, believe it or not, because it clearly covers all medications used for pain. Otherwise, you got to say opiates. Oh, that's oxycodone, but gee whiz, the semi-synthetics and the synthetics like methadone, oh, they're different. No, they're all narcotics, and they all can cause addiction. How frequently? 1 person per 1,000 will addict each year. And to opiates. How do you know? How do you know you've become addicted? Well, the National Pain Council has looked into this, and even though every single person can get a buzz taking cocaine, only 1 or 2 people per 1,000 will get euphoric or energized from taking a pain pill. Not everybody. Actually, pretty far away from everybody. Rare. And that's because it runs in families. And that's because it's actually triggered by genetic abnormalities. We all have a protection against getting euphoric when we take an opiate pill. But if you lose that, then if you take an opiate, you'll get an extremely wonderful euphoria. Now, if that happens to you on your very first pill, you have just self-diagnosed opiate addiction and may end up taking heroin and living on the streets. So it's very important that you realize it is not normal to be energized or to feel euphoric when you take opiate pain medicines. Very, very important that you realize this because opiate addiction is different. So if you become wildly euphoric, go to the moon, take a magic carpet ride, you must stop and not take the second pill. People want to take the second pill because it is so wonderful. Why not? But the second pill starts the addiction. So if doctors knew this, all the doctors would say is, have you ever had an opiate before? No. Okay. You have a family history? Oh, you do. Okay. You are at risk for developing opiate addiction. And you're going to know because when I give you this prescription, the first pill you take, you're going to feel energized. And you're not supposed to feel that way when you take opiates. Everybody else feels a little sick to their stomach, maybe a little fuzzy head, but not what you would describe as going to the moon. So the myth is that people take opiates to feel high. That's true if you have heroin addiction disease, which the total number of heroin addicts is 1/10 the number of people with severe painful disease who require daily pain medication as determined by the National Institutes of Drug Abuse and Nora Volkow, the very famous head. So we're going to leave this for another time to talk about it, but it's extremely important. And the last thing, which is even more important, if you don't get euphoric on the first pill, you will never, ever addict to opiate pain medicine, including heroin, because you have protective genes in place. Thank you and good night.